Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots, bootlickers, chills, desolate search, peasants, vassals, minions, meat sacks. I'm Useful Idiot, and today I want to talk about the assassination of President Ibrahim Raisi and Foreign Minister Amir Abdullahian of Iran. And most of the mainstream narrative and everything we've seen in the news talks about the fact that the aging helicopter, the aging Bell helicopter with low technology traveling in a remote region coming back from Azerbaijan crashed, and the president of Iran was killed basically by in a tragic accident. But there's some funny things about it, and also the fact that it was just too convenient. So I was never really convinced that it was an accident. And of course, one of the peculiar parts of this story is the fact that Iran did an investigation and they decided that there was no funny business and that indeed it was a tragic accident and a crash. But there's just too many interesting elements about it and some revelations that came out recently that clearly point to an Israeli Mossad assassination of the president of Iran. And I suspect that one reason why Iran might play it down is because of a phenomenon I talked about in the Gaza video, and that's the idea that Iran doesn't want to give Israel the satisfaction of knowing that they had a successful assassination made on their president, and then also the fact that even being open and reporting that it was an assassination would cause a lot of consternation and a lot of escalation in the Middle East and tensions between Israel and Iran. And I have no problem with that concept because, we have to remember that the world is run by a realpolitik, and these people are very pragmatic and strategic about information and warfare and in events like this. But one of the things that's kind of peculiar is that only one out of three helicopters crashed. So there were four helicopters involved, and just the one with President Raisi as the one that crashed. Then also we know that the region that the helicopter went down in is part of a Mossad influence region. They have a lot of technology and a lot of military and Mossad agents working in that area um, because that's how it works in the Middle East. So it's an area that Israel is very familiar with and is very capable of carrying out operations in. And there's also reports that tech experts suggest that the helicopter exploded in the air, which once again debunks the idea that it merely crashed because of bad terrain and fog. So those are things we may never know. And but one of the more interesting things that came out recently, to me anyway, is a source in Israeli intelligence. And granted, this is a nebulous, somewhat vague source, but it sounds right. And a source in the Israeli intelligence that says the action was approved by Netanyahu and the Israeli war cabinet. And the source was journalist Richard Silverstein, who talked about an Israeli Mossad agent talking about the fact that this assassination was carried out by Israel. And another person who upholds this idea is Hezbollah affiliated journalist Elijah Magnier. And I, I just find this very credible because Hezbollah journalist certainly would have some inside information as well. And it just reminds me that nothing is ever what it seems, and that's going to be a theme that's going to run through a lot of videos I do, because a lot of things that I've come to believe, and with a fairly substantial amount of evidence, is that the narrative that's presented to us, especially in this day and age, is nothing related to what is actually going on in reality. And I think this is a great situation with that. But I think there was also a convergence of facts and ideas that came out right around the same time. Not only the confrontation between Iran and Israel and the unprecedented direct attack by Iran into Israel, But a number of other developments uh, came out too, and I'll get to those in a minute. But I did want to talk about the fact that it's also interesting that we live in this day and age when all these events are taking place that would normally start wars or escalate wars. So we have random bombings, sporadic bombings by Israel in Syria, and yet there's no war between them. We have Hezbollah bombing the shit out of northern Israel, and yet there's no war there. And then, of course, we have the direct Iran attack on Israel, and yet there isn't a direct confrontation, an escalation, and a war there. So something to consider. Once again, it bolsters the idea that anything is possible, and everything out there you see is not exactly real. But some of the other things I wanted to get to because it reflects on President Raisi and some of his recent achievements, and it makes sense that some of these kind of voices, and we found that in certainly in U.S. history, voices of reason and people who have actual achievements, and that includes people like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X in the United States, and we've seen many other leaders who are also killed at the moment where they seem to be achieving something good. And I think this is a good example of that. Under President Raisi, Iran became a member of the BRICS Economic Union and also became a member of the Eurasia Economic Union as a major shareholder in that. And then, of course, has made reconciliations and agreements with other players in the union in the region: Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Libya, Sudan, Djibouti, and also a bilateral treaty with Russia, of course, of whom they've been longtime allies. And granted, the list of countries that they've been able to make some connections with, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Libya, and Sudan, Djibouti, are not exactly striking members, but we have to remember that a country that's been so isolated and become a pariah due to the machinations of Western powers, they have to connect with who they can, and certainly this is true of China as well. They connect with who they can, and they become a powerhouse in the region, and they become a powerhouse of economic development in Latin America and Africa now. But certainly they're not going to make any inroads in Western countries or Europe or anything like that. But I want to finish with a statement that President Raisi made that I thought was pretty eloquent and pretty profound, and it has to do with the fact that Iran, and I know this is probably going to ruffle a lot of feathers of people out there who subscribe to the media and political narrative that the United States and Europe have put forth. But the fact is that Iran is like China, is a country that's been around for thousands of years, continuously in different forms, but still they have a rich heritage and a rich history of their own they're very proud of. And so they're very proud of their country. And just like all countries, including the U.S., they have their issues, and they're dealing with their issues. And they have different cultural values based on a long history that seem strange and foreign to Westerners, and particularly in the United States. And it's unfortunate, but they have every right to be proud and independent of what they've achieved. And like I say, I don't want to overlook the problems that Iranian society does have. We have a very large, relative middle class and younger population that would like to see some big changes in Iran. And there's a lot of conservative elements that run the country and religious elements that run the country. And at some point, they're going to deal with that themselves. They have a large young middle class population, like I just said, that kind of longs for a lot of the luxuries and both tangible and material, as well as political and religious freedoms that they would like in Iran. And at some point, they will probably move to that. And but it's up to them. And this confrontation with the U.S. and the West certainly doesn't help matters. But anyway, I want to get to this statement by President Raisi because I thought it was really quite eloquent and expressed some great ideas. And I'm sure this kind of conciliatory and insightful uh, statement by him is possibly one of the things that ended up getting him killed, along with uh, other things. And also, I would add too that the dynamics in Iran, maybe the political elites in Iran, it was in their best interest to get rid of that President Raisi, being a reformer and somebody who wanted to operate on the international stage. But anyway, let me get to this quote. Quote, all countries have the right to independently choose their development models and political, economic, and social systems based on their national conditions and people's will, oppose interference in the internal affairs of sovereign countries, oppose unilateral sanctions and long-term jurisdiction without international law, books, or UN Security Council authorization, and oppose drawing ideological lines. Both sides pointed out that neocolonialism and hegemonism are completely contrary to the trend of the times and called for equal dialogue, the development of partnerships, and the promotion of exchanges and mutual learning among civilizations, and unquote. And I think that was really great. It addresses the idea that Iran, like China, would like to be treated as a partner and somebody to have an equal exchanges with the West, and that's a very reasonable request. Unfortunately, the American empire, they don't want partners; they want vassal states. And so these countries like Iran and China and other countries uh, get isolated, and that's not really a way to build bridges, and that doesn't really show much respect for another country. And so he actually addresses the fact that the UN has been part of this. A lot of these international organizations, the IMF, the World Bank, and whatnot, are all part of this uh, isolation of a country like Iran. And so, anyway, I thought that was a great way to end this video. But I think it's fairly reasonable to assess that all our instincts when Raisi was killed were correct, and that it was a Mossad operation. It seems to be acknowledged by internal Israeli agents and documentation, and not really surprised. Obviously, it's already passed. The results are already what they are, and nothing more will happen. Iran will move on. Their power structure will change. They might have gotten rid of an inconvenient possible hero in the country, and can maintain the control that they have now, and another lost opportunity, a voice of conciliation and exchange with other countries. So anyway, I know that's probably not going to win me any friends in YouTube land, and certainly people that have conventional views and buy the standard narrative out there. But that's what I'm here for. I'm a useful idiot. Don't you be one too.